Maloelele, and welcome to the Polynesian Eyes podcast, where we discuss a variety of topics from culture, history, religion, and everything around the globe through Polynesian Eyes. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
So how do you encourage people to find that? Like truly, you've got to have a high level of self-love and care before you can then go and perform in whatever profession you're going to do.
Yeah. Well, the thing about the summit is it teaches you a lot, right? It teaches you, and it not only does it teach you a lot, but it teaches you because it exposes you to a lot. It exposes you to a lot of the what the world calls as the finer things in life. you get to be, you're held at such regard that you stay at the finest places, at the nicest hotels. You get to ride in private jets. All the monetary things that this world can give you. When you reach that summit, it's at your disposal.
You got what you want. Yeah.
Yeah. You have everything. It's a buffet, right? The greatest thing about being a member of the church, and when I say this, I'm going to take it a step further, as the greatest thing about having a spiritual background, a spiritual foundation that was built, starting with my parents, being born and raised in the church, growing up in Laie, which is predominantly all members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. One of the biggest advantages of that is you get to experience what peace feels like. All of these things when you're at the summit, the jewelry, the clothes, the clubs, the hotels, the private jets, the Rolls Royces. I've been in all of them. All of them are cool. All of them may give you a little excitement for the time being, right? But they're all missing something. And it's the peace that can only come from God. That is a thing that I recognized while I was up there at the summit, that it's all missing something. That's why people keep chasing at it. It's like, here's some money. Well, I need more. Here's more. I need some more. Here's this nice house. Well, I need a bigger one.
It's the hit. Yeah.
It's that constant craving for it, right? When God gives you peace, it's just like, I just want to be around it. I just want to feel it constantly. It's not like those worldly cravings. It's it's like how he says, drink from this and you'll never go thirsty again. That is peace. When you start drinking from the fountain of the world, you're always gonna be thirsty. And that is something that I am very, very grateful that I was given that foundation to know where to turn to when I want to feel whole, when I want to feel at peace with my life and with myself. And so with all of that being said, that is something for people who are in search of things, right? They're in search of a purpose. They're in search of trying to change their financial circumstances for them and their family. And that is all great. But I know a lot of people that are living in $1 billion mansion that are miserable.
100%.
And there are people that live in a hut that are happy as a clam, that are surrounded by their kids, and their kids know they love them and they love their kids, and they wouldn't trade it for the other. So I would rather be in the mansion with my kids, happy as a clam. They know I love them. I know they love me. However, I would take that scenario and put it in anything. Understand that that's my core, is having God at the center of my family, having my kids, having my wife, having my siblings, everybody right with me, than to live a life of lavish and be miserable, and be alone, be by myself, not have my kids, and my kids not know that I love them, and me not have a relationship with my kids. Because that is where, for me, that's the true meaning of life. And that's a true source. That's the source at which I go to for my purpose, my passion. Hence why I went on this journey of I would call it like self redefining myself, of who I am, my outer look. It wasn't for anybody. It wasn't for me. It's because as my kids grow up,
before looks like he's going to segment out. What are your thoughts, Marcy? I think he's starting to touch on a lot of the things we were kind of mentioning earlier. Like he's totally shifted to kind of more of a spiritual focus and purpose there. What are your thoughts?
Nope, I think we touched on it, right? Because I think he touched that he's grateful for his upbringing, especially the spiritual side of his upbringing and the environment he grew up in by his parents. That that's what helped him to know what was missing, right? Because he's been through all the materialistic things. It was fun and cool, and I think we all go through that. But then you are never satisfied. There's no peace. You're always trying to find something, and I feel like that spiritual, when you were combining your spiritual and temporal things, that when you get your spiritual stuff sorted out, or when you rediscover it, you know what's more important, what you need to do to make sure that you're doing the right things spiritually, so that you can maintain and also withstand challenges of life, and that is peace, right? Everyone's trying to find peace in a way that and peace can be defined as, to me, peace defines as you're comfortable within yourself and within your family, of where you're at in life, and you have peace that whatever challenges do come your way, that it may affect you or your family, you're still going to have peace, because you know there's something beyond you, and that's God. Could be your ancestors that passed on are with you, that will take on this challenge, kind of thing. So I think that's the
Yeah.
piece that I'm thinking of. Tua, just personally, when Manti Te'o says, talks about this piece, but yeah, man. I mean, I am, I think most Polynesian homes do at least have heard of God, and I do, for others that don't have that spiritual backing, that is really difficult. Personally, I don't know how you would be able to overcome some real challenges, but I feel like in order to know what peace is, and prepare for challenges of this life, earth life. Yeah, man, that spiritual foundation is huge, and not only that, but like, even if you're like, and that's why it's important with the extended family. If you have like your parents or your siblings who are spiritual too, that can kind of help and guide you, or just help kind of influence you too, because we all sometimes don't stay on the path all the time. We kind of wander off and then come back, and then times go off, and it's good to surround yourself with spiritual people. But yeah.
No, 100%. And I think we mentioned this earlier in our discussion, dude. Manti is offering top notch experience and knowledge and insight that future Polynesian athletes,
Mm,
this is the kind of stuff that sets you up for success right here, right? Is this understanding and this experience, and really he is providing a fantastic opportunity for the future generation to learn, to be
mm,
aware, and how to kind of avoid some of the pitfalls and to prepare themselves mentally and spiritually to, the way I'll describe it is this: if you get the temporal blessing first, it can become a curse, right?
mm,
Nothing wrong with money,
yeah.
nothing wrong with fame, nothing
Mm,
wrong with those things. But if you haven't developed yourself to be able to handle that, it becomes a curse for you, because that ends up being what destroys you. But if you develop yourself spiritually, when that comes, you know how to handle it. You know how to use it for good and to improve yourself and those around you
Mm,
rather than destroy you. And then, because really in business, money gives you speed. Cash.
mm,
Cash gives you speed. And it's the same thing with individuals. When you get fame and when you get wealth, all it does is it gives you speed. And if you're heading in the wrong direction because you aren't fortified spiritually, you just crash faster, right? Like
yeah.
if you are already heading in the wrong direction, you get money, you get wealth, you get fame, you get all that stuff. You just get to the bad destination quicker. But
Hmm.
if you're already headed in the right direction, then it just helps you go in the right direction even further, which is why you have to, the right order of the spiritual versus the temporal is really critical. Now, in regards to peace, from my life experience, there are two types of peace that one could enjoy. One comes from knowledge and experience, right?
Mm,
Because you're already seeing this and your mind is prepared, or you have endured a similar type of hardship, you have a certain level of peace just from that knowledge. Like you just have that knowledge because, oh, no matter what, we'll get through this. We're going to be fine. I've survived this before. The other one is just literally a blessing from God, where nothing, it, you don't know why you feel peaceful, because in your head you're like, dude, I should be freaking out because I don't know the answer. I don't know how to solve these things, but I feel peace.
mm,
And that is literally to me just a blessing from God through the Spirit that goes, hey, I know you don't know how this is going to be resolved.
mm.
You don't know the path forward, but just enjoy this feeling that I'm giving you that will get you through this hard time. And
Yeah.
those are the two types of peace that my life that I kind of experience. And with the experience that Manti has gone through, now that he knows who he is and what his goal is, he has a lot of peace because now he understands where he stands. And then the other
Yeah.
piece is just from doing what's right, and the Spirit just comforts you moving forward.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, and no, I was just thinking too that even when you do have this peace, some people do get misunderstood, like misunderstanding that when you do have this peace, that it doesn't mean that there's not going to be challenges that are going to come your way too.
Mhm.
So, so yeah, because I know there's a lot of people who say, hey, I've been doing, well, people are saying, I've been doing the right thing, doing what I'm supposed to do, studying the scriptures, going to church, coming, but you say, why is this thing still happening? It's just part of the journey. And
Yep.
just because what you're doing is right and stuff doesn't mean that you're not gonna have challenges come your way. But
And the challenge could be the blessing. I'm a big
yeah,
believer in this, Masi. The blessing can become a curse,
mm,
and the curse can become the blessing. And
mm,
it really just comes down to, do you have God on your side? And if God's on your side, if you have a curse in front of you, he will turn it into something good. And if
mm,
God's on your side, the blessing will not become a curse for you, and you will be just fine. And
mm,
so, kind of like what you're saying, like, don't worry about, that's easy to say when you're not in a tough spot, but really just have faith, do
yeah,
what you know you should be doing, and just keep moving forward, and let the guy upstairs take care of whatever's meant to happen.
100%.
All right.
I want them to see the example of the type of life I want for them is in the way that I live my life. Because my kids aren't going to remember what I tell them, but they're going to remember how they saw me move and how I walk through this life and how I do life. I want that to be a bigger lesson to them than what I say out of my mouth.
When you go through experiences like this,
Mm.
the people around you tend to show themselves.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I don't want to focus on the negative parts of this, because
Yeah.
there was a lot of people that probably showed themselves in a negative way.
Yeah.
Left your life, talk their shit, whatever it was,
Mhm.
but they didn't have your back.
Yeah.
Who's one person that was your ride or die through all of this? Was just there, was a rock through this whole situation?
There are 7 of them. Brian Te'o, Otilia Te'o, Brianne Te'o, Tiara Te'o, Eden Te'o, Maya Te'o, Manessa.
Those seem to all have the same last name.
We all,
It's your
mom,
family.
dad, my siblings. And again, bro, the summit will expose you to something. The summit will expose you to the entourage. The fall will reveal. They will make that fall will make things very, very clear. And that's the beauty of it, of the fall, is it makes life crystal clear. Like at first, your water's a little murky, and then when you fall from grace like that, it clears. Bro, it makes things crystal clear.
What are your thoughts, Masi?
It's important to have good relationships with your family because at the end of the day, I know that we're in a world of your friends are. It's cool to hang out with your friends or do what your friends say, follow your friends on social media or trying to do. But yeah, man, your friends. There's and I'm not saying these are all your friends. There's some friends that are really good friends that will stick with you, but you know, um, your family are the big Manti's Manti's experience. His family are the only ones that stuck with him when everyone was going against him. And this is
Mhm.
probably going. He probably had so much close friends that he thought were close, but only in the good times. And then when this happened, I didn't hear him mention anybody else other than his family. But yeah, just like what you said, this is a good learning lesson for everyone, especially our Polynesian people who are especially pursuing sports in in a high level. That just make sure that you have a good, healthy relationship with your family.
Yep. As you know, Masi, and as you know, the few viewers that we have, and we appreciate every viewer because we're
Yes,
just
we do.
starting
Yes,
out.
we do.
We're just starting out. But we do have a series on the creation, and there's a reason why Adam and Eve fell,
Hmm.
right? And what Manti, from my perspective, Manti is giving a lesson on a cosmic level that could explain how and why we're here. Whatever happened in the pre-existence, what the fall and the experience of this mortal life for all of us, when we get back to the other side, we're all going to say what Manti said.
Hmm.
It is crystal clear who had my back. Okay?
Hmm. Hmm.
Whatever was going on in the pre-existence, it seems like we accomplished a lot in the pre-existence.
Yeah.
We might have been having tons of people in our ears. Oh, Masi, you're great. Manti, you're
Hmm.
great. Tua, you're great. But when we fell and we came down to this earth, and I really believe this, Masi, and the reference I will use is Lehi's dream.
Yeah.
That great and spacious building.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, it is the pride of the world. But anybody who listened to our podcast, part 2,
Hmm.
when the Lord uses the term world, it tends to be a spiritual reference, not necessarily the world earth, but a
Like
spiritual
pre.
world.
Yeah, the spiritual
Okay.
world.
And the great and spacious building is called the pride of the world. And this is something I personally believe. There are people in the spirit world who mocked us for coming down to this fallen world, and they may have been the ones cheering us on in the pre-existence or whatever. I don't know. This is, this is my personal belief. They're mocking us now, and when we get to the other side, we will be very crystal clear. The only persons that had our back was God the Father, Jesus Christ, and those who kept their covenants and are trying to do what's right. And we will see very clearly the people who were just in the quote unquote entourage that he's describing. And that's something that I think that rings true to me in what he's describing. That's why I say the curse can very well be the greatest blessing that you get if you have God on your side. If you don't have God on your side, then the curse just remains a curse. But if you have God on your side, the curse becomes the blessing.
Yeah.
And that's, Manti is a prime example of that. Because he had God on his side, when and I'm granted, he probably wasn't very happy with God. No one ever is when you're going through these hard times. But because God was on his side, he comes out on the other side and things are crystal clear. Because why? God revealed to him. That little world that you built up in your head, that you were the man and everybody loved you and everybody had Manti's back. Well, now that you've fallen, now you know who are the people that actually care about you, which is the people that I put you with, your family. And and by the way, God, I was by your side. So that's kind of my long story on that. But I think Manti is giving us a really good lesson on the plan of salvation and how things are happening for a reason. And if we do what we should be doing and invite God to be in our life through this fallen world experience, when we get to the other side, we may very well be saying what Manti is saying. Crystal clear now. I now see what I didn't see before I came to this earth.
Yeah. Awesome point, Tua.
All right, we'll jump back in.
And pre 2013, there was a lot of people on my entourage. There was a lot of people saying, "You're the greatest. You're the best. You're my inspiration. You're my role model.
You're my guy.
I got you. Like whatever you need. Like I got your back." Oh well. Post 2013, where you at? But the only ones that were always there was, somebody asked me a similar question, and I told him this. You click on that Katie Couric show that I was on post 2013. Who's the only two people you see there? My parents. The only two, bro. Nobody from the Heisman was there. Nobody from all of the awards that I was there. No, that I won that was there.
Coaches, teammates.
Yeah. Nobody was actively there. Now, whether they were trying to, I don't know. But the only two, you click on that show, the only two people that you see there with me, with our backs against the wall, was my parents. And like I said, crystal. That's crystal clear, bro. And that was what I was grateful for. That is what I meant by I wouldn't be the man if I didn't do the fall. Because if I would have continued on that path, that entourage would have doubled, then tripled. And there's no way that somebody who's around that many people, who's hearing those many things, whether it be positive or negative, can sit in front of you as a wholesome human being and say those things. Like there's a reason why those people that are at that level, I do not envy those people, because I know the torment that is that life, that life brings, to have those many voices in your, not me, crystal. So, yeah.
Through that process, did you ever turn your back on God?
Yeah.
Talk to me about the evolution of your relationship with God.
Well, 2 days after 2 days after the news broke, I remember sitting, keep in mind, I'm in Florida. I'm in Bradenton, Florida. I'm at the IMG Academy. I'm trying to prepare for the combine. News breaks, world is in chaos. Like it's just consuming me, right? And so I remember I'm in my apartment. I'm in the bedroom portion of my apartment, and I'm sitting at one edge of my bed, looking across the other edge, like I'm looking at you right now, and yelling as if God was sitting on the other side, yelling at him like, how could you ever let this happen to me? I did everything you ever wanted me to do.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So once again,
So
go
no.
ahead,
So
Masi.
I was gonna say. So it looks like maybe the leak hasn't come out, but you know, when he was preparing for the national championship game, but
Mhm.
he's already known that this person is come back alive and he's questioning, right? So that's why. And then it's probably after the national championship, then everything breaks loose, right? So that's all. I just wanted to
Yeah.
touch on that, but
Interesting. This is interesting. It's very. I feel he's being very sincere here.
yeah,
I
yeah,
lived my life the way you wanted me to live it. How could you let me fall, man? I've honored you and I've given you all the praise every step of the way. And you let this happen to me, like yelling, bro, as if the man himself was there. And I remember as I'm in this rage and as I'm yelling, the words footprints in the sand came up in my head. And I remember thinking at that time, like the only thing that I know of those words were the song. It was a song by Leona Lewis at that time that was out that I would listen to. But I went on my phone and I typed it in, and a poem pops up. And I don't know if you know about the poem "Footprints in the Sand," but for those who don't know about that poem, it's about a man who passes, and when he passes to the next life, he's standing with God, and across the sky flashes scenes from his life, and he's standing with God, and God says, he looks at God, he says, "Hey God, I noticed that, throughout my life, there's always two set of footprints, but the toughest times in my life, I only see one. How come in those toughest times of my life and the darkest times of my life, you left me, you abandoned me?" And keep in mind, bro, I'm in this room by myself. It's dark. And I just was yelling at this man as if he was sitting there. And the end of that poem, God says, "My child, I would never leave you. Those times that you saw one set of footprints, that's when I carried you." And it was as if God himself just responded to my yelling. And then I opened the scriptures, bro. And then I think it's DNC 122 or 121, one of those chapters. Doctrine and Covenants, for those people who don't know what I'm referring to. Doctrine and Covenants 121 or 122. And I believe the backstory of it, and it just so happened, they referenced it in General Conference this past weekend, was about Joseph Smith when he was in jail.
Liberty
And
Jail.
it talks about God's response to him and saying things that, when hell shall open its mouth wide after you, if the heaven itself shall come upon you, just all of these bad things that could happen to an individual. At the ending verses of that chapter, it says, "Know thou, my son, that all of these things shall give you experience. The Son of Man hath descended below them all. Art thou greater than he?" Bro, I remember, bro, I'm just like sitting there like, okay, I get it. I'm not going to be perfect with it, but I understand. Now I need you to help me, and I need you to help me make sense of this life. So did I turn my back on God? Yup. Did I go from that bedroom and perfectly follow him? Nope. There were those times where I was like, okay, God, like, come on now. 4th year in the NFL.
Any thoughts, Masi?
pretty good. No, I'm just pretty proud of him that he was, you know, going through those difficult times and turning to the scriptures, just trying to find answers, and he got a clear understanding of where he's at and why bad things are happening to him. I think I mentioned earlier, when he was doing everything right, always kind of putting mentioning God and all of his accolades that he was achieving in football and stuff, and doing the right thing, and this thing still happen. It's all part of the journey, that even if you're doing everything right, you're gonna have things come. And I think just just having that perspective that when you're doing everything right, that just always expect some challenges to come, and that probably helps you a little bit better to kind of prepare, or don't be surprised if things happen. You just got to keep persevering and enduring to the end. That's always the last principle: endure to the end, because that means challenges are going to come to you in your childhood, your teenage years, your early adult, marriage, uh, career wise. So I'm just like, but yeah, I'm just really, actually, really, 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 happy that Manti was able to do that, because because from my understanding, I know he didn't serve a mission, but to be able to turn to the scriptures and find that, and that's credit to probably to his parents teaching him that. It's pretty cool, man. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, dude, the guy's lived a lifetime through this experience alone.
Mm,
And honestly, this is dude, he was doing something right. And
mm,
I know he said in there that he turned his back on God.
mm.
If that's what he said, he's turning his back on God. I have news for Manti, man.
Yeah.
You may have felt you turned your back on God, but I don't feel like he turned his back. He was upset with God,
Mm,
right? He was frustrated with God. And to me, the fact that he felt that that was him turning his back on God just goes to show the type of relationship he must have had with God, that even just him sharing that type of concern and raw emotion to God was like him. He felt like, oh man, I turned. But from my perspective, I don't feel like he turned his back on God. I think he was upset with God. He was expressing some concern,
mm.
and really, this experience was designed to help him. I mean, this is to me no different than Abraham, right?
Mm.
God made all these promises, led Abraham, gave him all these great things, and then said, oh yeah, you remember that one son that I gave you, that I said you're gonna be blessed and have many nations, that I need you to sacrifice him.
Mm.
And that's the same thing with Manti. This whole journey, he's had all this
Yeah.
success. He's trying to do what God wants him to do, and then lead him to this, right? Abraham could have said the same thing. How could you ask me to give up my son after I've done everything? You know what I mean? Same
Everything
thing
right.
with, yeah, same thing with Jonah. I mean,
Mm.
not Jonah, Job, right? Job does
Oh, Job.
everything right.
Yeah.
And then what
Yeah.
happened? Lose everything.
And
You
kept
know?
going. It kept going,
Yeah.
kept going. Oh man, it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. And then here he is referencing Joseph Smith when he's in Liberty Jail. I've been to
Mm.
Liberty Jail. It's one of my favorite places that I visited in church history.
Mm.
Same thing with Joseph. He was doing
Yep.
everything that God wanted him to do. He was trying his best, building a relationship. And what happens? He finds himself in, not only in jail in the winter suffering, but then to hear the news that also the saints were suffering,
Yeah.
right? Being raped, being killed, being kicked out of their homes.
Mm.
So to me, dude, Manti is giving a master class on the plan of salvation and what it means to quote unquote wrestle with God. That's why for me, I don't feel like he turned his back on God. He was wrestling with God, because
Mm.
why? God was revealing, and this is really what's special about what he's going through, is through this whole thing, not only does he see crystal clear the relationships on earth,
Yeah.
but more importantly, he is understanding greater who God is and the character of God. And the scriptures are very clear that it is life eternal to know the one true God. He is experiencing God at a more intimate level than if God just blessed him with a successful NFL career. right? Like this is priceless what he's experiencing, and the relationship he's building with God is just, this is cool. Like I said, our future Polynesians, man, take your time, listen to Manti, and
Yeah.
really take some of the advice that he's giving, because this is stuff that money cannot buy.
Yeah.
Just starting to get my groove. No longer dealing with the anxiety. It's my contract year, right? First game, Kansas City Chiefs, 10 plus tackles. Ooh, this is feeling good. Prior to that year, my defensive coordinator pulled me on the side with our head coach, said, hey, listen, you played 16 games. I'm the captain of the team. You play 16 games, we'll pay you. Your parents won't have to work another day in their life. We'll set you up for life as a Charger. Perfect. Boom. It's right there. It's attainable. I can reach it. I can taste it. I can feel it. That's what I got to do. Okay. I prepared myself that year. First game, like I said, Kansas City Chiefs, 10 plus tackles. We lose that game, unfortunately. Second game, Jacksonville Jaguars, 10 plus tackles again. Boom. I'm like, ooh, this is feeling good. Third game, we're in Indianapolis playing the Colts. I already had four or six tackles, bro. Beginning of the second quarter, four or six already. Do the math.
You're jamming.
I'm jamming. Times that by 4. That's, do the math. You know what I'm saying?
15,
That's 20
tackles.
plus.
Yeah.
So it's just feeling good. Beginning of the second quarter, I plant my left foot, Achilles. Boom, gone. Career, done. Possibly done. Season for sure, done. All right, God. Come on now.
We're back here.
What's up, man? But guess what, bro? My sister comes. She flies up from Hawaii to San Diego. The day that I get home, later on that day, she's in my house. She's preparing for a mission. I had never read the Book of Mormon my whole life. First time ever with her. My wife, we dated. She was my girlfriend at the time. We dated for years. She took the missionary lessons. Still wasn't a member. Through that experience with my sister and being around my sister, she joined the church. Months later, I took all my endowment. Okay, God, I get it. I understand. I wish that it was the other way, but I wouldn't be the man. I wouldn't be endowed. I wouldn't be married. I wouldn't be sealed in the temple. I get it. What is important to you? The football or the man? The man.
You see the pattern there?
Yeah.
Imagine. And this is the pattern we're starting to see. Fantastic career high school, fantastic career through college. A lot of guys don't start making their critical mistakes until they get to the NFL and they just have this enormous amount of money and so forth. Is it by chance that every time he's at the pinnacle point where the trajectory is going to change dramatically, that all of a sudden a setback, a quote unquote curse happens, and then it totally changes his relationship with God? And then, hey, look, it's another mini fake girlfriend death, another setback, right? He's finally turning the corner in his NFL career. And what happened? A smaller version of what happened when this whole national news happened. The same thing. He tears his Achilles tendon. He's on the verge of just making the big money, launching his career even further. And what happens? Like we're talking about, he must have been doing something right, because why?
Yeah.
Just as the temporal is about to get into the way, the spiritual blessings that need to be met, and he seems to have it in the right order, because why? Every time the temporal seems to be kind of a distraction, God says, hey, Manti, we're just going to pause this for a second. There's a unique opportunity for you to get some blessings in this timeline that you probably wouldn't get if I didn't. And I'm not saying that God went and tore his Achilles. These things just happen sometimes. But what I'm saying is, when God's on your side and bad things happen, he can turn the bad thing into a really good thing. I'm not saying God went there and tore his Achilles tendon. What I am saying is, he must have been doing something right, because when things should have gone wrong, miraculous blessings come out, which tells me God was on his side. Because if God wasn't on his side, it would have just spiraled into something. The curse would have remained a curse. But
Mm,
because God was on his side, every time a little curse popped up, what does it end up being? A
a
huge
blessing.
blessing for him. And, that's just kind of like the pattern I'm starting to see in the
Yeah.
stories that he's saying, Masi.
Yeah. No, and I mean, yeah. I mean, even if it's not him, I think you touched on it too, about his family. His family must be praying. Looks like in this scenario, his sister preparing to go on a mission, wanted to read the Book of Mormon. Manti's first time to read the Book of Mormon from front to the end. Hey, it's all, getting endowed, able to get his then his girlfriend, his wife now, to be baptized into the church. There's been a lot of blessings when that injury happened to Manti. That, like you said, was a bad thing, but if you look at it in detail and in a spiritual sense, it was a lot of blessing. So
Yep.
yeah, man, it's very interesting.
Yep. Very cool. Very kind of interesting patterns we're starting to see here.
I want to talk about this tattoo and the Polynesian culture. For those who can't see,
Hmm.
Manti's got
Your favorite topic, Masi. Tattoos.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
a full sleeve. Does that wrap to your chest too?
No, just right here. It cuts off at the
Got
shoulder.
a full sleeve.
Yeah.
It's a Polynesian tribal tattoo. Talk to me about what this tattoo represents, and talk to me about what the Polynesian culture means to you.
Yeah. So I first got the first part of my tattoo done my freshman year in college, and you know, it was a big deal, for me and for my family. My dad is very old school, and for those who are old school, understand what that means. There's a progression. There's a hierarchy, right? Like as a Polynesian young man, you can't just go do something, because all your actions reflect not only yourself, it also reflects your family. So I can't just go out and get a tattoo, like that's not possible. So for me to be able to get a tattoo my freshman year, I asked my dad, and my dad was gracious to let me get one, but he made sure that I understood what that would mean, especially for a member of the church. Allowed me to get it. And so a lot of the motifs and the designs that this one has designs that represent my father, represents my family, represents qualities about myself, um, strength, wisdom. And then the bottom part, I just got like a year ago, from Fred Frost out here in Utah, one of the best. And I went to Fred specifically because I didn't want it to look like two different tattoos, because this was done by a different artist. And so I wanted to make sure that he was able to carry out the same designs, the same things that were important to me on this one. And so I was grateful that he was able to do that. But the Polynesian culture, it is a culture that is built on God. It is a culture that is built on family. It's a culture that's built on respect. It's a culture that's built on humility, on hard work, on strength, on being very aware of others. And I think I didn't realize how big that was until now. I get into society now, and it's so about me, about
Mm,
me, 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 me. In the culture that I grew up in, it's about how can I help you, and that is what has built me to be who I am now. It's got me in some trouble, right? A lot of the reasons why I got into that situation was because I was trying to help. But
Like we mentioned earlier, comes from a good place,
yeah.
but it can be taken advantage of with the wrong kind of people around you. But
Mm,
what are your
yeah.
thoughts? You have anything to add to that, Masi?
No, yeah. No, and you know, because even in the Polynesian culture, you'll find this is when you're dealing with, because Polynesians, you are with a wider extent of family than when you, right, when you live in this culture and you're helping, you can find out. to you can find out within your family who are the ones you can really rely on, and the
Mm-hmm.
ones that need more help, that you probably have to pay a little bit more attention to, and the ones who are they're the funny ones, right? They're still family, you still deal with them, but you still, those are the funny ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
And no, I was just thinking of that, of even when you're the Polynesian family and stuff, especially when you're living with those extended families, because you do everything together. You always it helps you just shape, and those are the experience, and that's why Manti, was still trying to figure out, because he looks like, because he was such a young man, all he knew was just always help, help, help. I think he didn't figure out, when you're helping, you got to figure out who are the ones who really need help, who are the ones who that they're okay, they can just help them a little bit here, but and knowing some of the bad actors you mentioned. But I was just thinking of that but now I'm also the other one when he's talking about the tattoo. I think it was George Mason's account with the tattoo, when apparently the Tongans would always just have their normal tattoos, right, from the stomach, waist,
The
Samoa's to
groin area,
yes.
yeah.
And apparently, and this is what George Mason was saying. The sea combers people. These are the palangis that would kind of just stay on the edges of the sea, or because their boats were wrecked or whatever. Apparently, they would take parts of the design, and they'll put it on their wrist or put it on their hands
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. But that's just my understanding. I could be wrong on that, but from my understanding it was just taking parts from the palangis, from what they were seeing that was tatted on, because they didn't do the whole full tattoo. They would just take little parts and just put it on their hands
Yeah,
or
the
their
most
wrist.
visible parts.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, that
Hmm.
was just my two things that I was thinking of.
So are you saying that the sleeve wasn't necessarily a traditional thing?
I That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
That the
I'm not
only
aware of
tradition
that.
the only traditional things were that full on from the knee, getting it all the way up to
To
your
the belly button
waist,
and stuff,
belly
yeah.
button, waist. And it was the Caucasian, it was sea combers. I think George Mason used that. They would see it and they would want to get some kind of tattoo, but they would only get like certain designs from certain parts of the legs and stuff, and just put it on their arms and
Mm,
sleeves, or put it around their thighs or legs, ankles. That's my understanding. But
interesting.
yeah, I just thought I'd share
Yeah.
that.
I mean, and it just, for like what we had discussed before, for whatever reason, the tattoo has become such a big part of the identity.
Mm.
Interesting. Interesting. It's not nothing, anything
No,
necessarily wrong
and
with it,
it's a
but it's just
yes.
interesting.
Yes, and I was just gonna say to it's still a good thing if we've evolved and have it like a much more meaningful thing. You know what I mean? It's not. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that just what I've learned,
Observed. Yeah.
observed, and what the accounts I've kind of read, because yeah, and it makes to me it makes sense. That they would do that, and
Add
that's why
value.
that's kind of passed on today. And and I enjoyed Mante's explanation of his tattoo and stuff and what's evolved. And to me, that's not a doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It's a good thing that he's explained that and his family connections. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's all.
100%.
Rather be the one that's willing to help than the one that's scared because of the repercussions.
Hmm.
So my culture is very, very important to me. It's something that I'm very, very grateful that I was raised in. And it's something it's a part of my life, a big part of my life that governs a lot of the choices that I make.
Hmm.
Polynesian culture's near and dear to my heart. Adopted a brother in high school who's didn't have a dad. Mom passed away.
Mhm.
He played running back. I played quarterback. We were just that dynamic duo,
Yeah.
And it was Willie Wolfgram. And a few funny quirks about the Polynesian culture for sure. Like one of them that I always bring up is Polynesians are like the hardest working lazy people ever. Like, do you agree with that?
Well, it depends, like I would like to say there comes a time where you've paid your dues, and now it's somebody else's turn to pay the dues, it's my son's turn to mow the grass, it's my daughter's turn to wash the dishes, but we know exactly how to the grass should be mowed. We know exactly how the house should look when it's clean white because we cleaned it for so many years. So yeah, we're very, very hardworking, but I like to think that at a certain time we get smart and we were like, okay, I don't got to do it anymore, so you got to do it, you know. So I see what that means, bro.
There was a group of us that used to.
What are your thoughts on that comment, Masi?
Ooh.
Especially the interviewer's comment. You know,
Yeah.
not necessarily Manti's, but what
Yeah.
would be
The
your
inter
thoughts?
yeah. Hardworking, lazy. I'm not too. I mean, it just always depends on what your perspective is. Some Tongans don't feel like certain things. See, and this is the thing with the cultural clash, right? Some things that some certain group of people think that's important to do, Tongans may not think that's important to do, right?
Exactly.
So, like for example, Caucasians, career is a really big deal, right? You do whatever you do to work the long hours, work all these things, do whatever it needs to be done to be promoted to another thing, right? A Tongan's perspective is this is what I'm thinking. A job is just get to this platform so that I can do what I need to do with my family affairs. And I put more of my energy into family affairs if that means to prepare for a wedding for a niece or whatever, and do all the staying up late for the funeral, cooking, and then going to work and maybe not just taking it easy just to get by, right? And then some maybe other people would think, oh, you're lazy, you're not doing it. What you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That to me, it's where they put their energy and emphasize what's important. Most Tongans or a Polynesian would emphasize their family affairs more important and maybe than their work. And then if you see a Caucasian where you just see their work is more important and their family affairs is really not pretty much non-existent. So all their energy goes to that. I don't know. That's what I'm thinking. And maybe that's why he's getting that he made that comment. Maybe I don't know. I don't know. I'm just
Yeah, I
thinking out
mean,
loud.
and the I agree 100%. Right,
Mm,
a European or a Westerner could look at the Polynesian perspective on the world and say, "Man, that's lazy," right?
mm.
And then the Polynesian at the same time could look at the Westerner and say, "Man, you're greedy." Or you don't appreciate family, right? Like you got
Mm,
your
mm,
priorities messed up.
mm.
So
Yeah.
really they're looking at each other and making the same judgment on each other. But to me, the reason why he would come up, the best example I can give is why he would come up with that they're lazy but they're hardworking is
Mm,
this. And I first observed this on my mission. So let's say you get a Miko crew and a Tongan crew to build a rock wall.
okay.
Eh? The Miko crew would show up from the very beginning. They're just working. Eh? They're just like, oh, shoveling,
Mm,
moving things, but there's like 7 of them. Eh? One guy is with a little shovel, he's just shoveling. Another guy is bringing the rocks, and they're just nonstop all day. Eh?
mm,
And they build a certain section of the wall. Let's say they build 10 feet in one day, these 7 guys. And the moment they show up, they're just chipping away at it. Eh?
mm,
They build 10 feet. The Tongan crew comes up, and let's say there's only 4 of them. Well, they'll show up and then they'll be like, hey, let's go get some chicken and French bread. You know what I mean? They'll
yeah.
sit down, they'll eat, they'll talk, and, you know, spend like an hour, 2 hours in the morning just eating, talking before they get started.
Mm,
And then they'll work, and then they'll come to lunchtime. They'll work for like 2 hours, and then they'll have lunchtime, and then they'll sit down, eat. You know what I mean?
mm,
And have lunch for another hour and a half.
mm,
And then when it comes to the end of the day, they'll finish maybe 45 minutes earlier than when the Miko crew
Mm.
showed up. But you know what's funny? When
What's
you
funny?
look at the work that was done, they both built 10 feet worth of the rock wall.
Mm.
So that's why, like, sometimes, like, when I hear him say, oh, they're like the laziest, hardworking people, is because from the Westerner's perspective, dude, imagine if you just worked nonstop like a Miko guy,
Mm.
right? Where you just came first thing in the morning. The Miko is consistent working, but he's not the output of production during the work is not as much as when the Polynesian guy, like the Polynesian guy only worked for like 2.5 hours before lunch, but he got like 5 feet in. Well, the Miko guy, every 2 hours, he's got like maybe 2.5 feet built.
Mm.
And so the perspective is, man, if that's what you can do in 2.5 hours, imagine if you just worked for 15 hours a day. You would have built 100 feet
Mm.
of rock wall. But then it comes back to what you're saying. Well, I'm just here because I need to pay for something for my family.
Mm.
Or,
Mm.
you know what? I want to get to know the guy I'm working with is my cousin, and I enjoy hanging out and talking with him.
Mm.
And that relationship matters. And so you can see how, yeah, they get a lot done, but they're also, quote unquote, wasting time and being lazy at the same
Mm.
time as well.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
where the Westerner says, oh, you need to wake up and work all day nonstop. And the Polynesian guy is like, nah, I'm going to hang out today. But tomorrow, when you really need it done, okay, I'll get up and get it done. So that's just maybe why he has that perspective. I don't know.
Yeah. No, until and I was just thinking maybe we can cover this maybe another time or anything. But like I always just to it's always important to I understand why we use Polynesians because we're all the same. But I think it's when time, especially now that it's going to be important to also distinguish. There's a group of Polynesians that are Tongans, Samoans, because we all, especially Tongans, Samoans, and maybe like Fijians. Just within that set of groups, our culture is unique enough that it perpetuates different behaviors too. So I was just
Mhm.
thinking because there is that vast, and that we can go more in details much later, but
Yeah, there's some
that's what I was.
unique behaviors
Yes,
even within that.
yes, yeah,
Not
yeah,
100%,
yeah.
100%.
To drink kava together back in the day.
Mm.
And we would sit around with these little chairs. We put a Home Depot bucket in the middle. We one of the OGs would make the kava.
Mhm.
And we this one week it was basically all Polynesians and me every week. And one week I invited another friend who was a white guy,
Yeah.
and
How did that go?
he came and he drank a couple drinks till
Yeah.
he started throwing up.
Yeah, yeah.
And everybody was clowning him the rest of the
Yeah.
night, and he was all sick and like,
Yeah.
I got to go home. And so can you share, those were some good experiences sitting around drinking kava.
Mhm.
And there's also other experiences doing cookouts. Cooked a lot of
Mhm.
pigs, cooked a lot. I've
Yeah.
cooked a full buffalo in the
Oh,
ground
wow.
before.
Yeah.
Wow.
We've done a lot of stuff like that. So, culturally around things like, kava, barbecuing, that
Mhm.
sort of thing. Talk to
Mhm.
me about that.
Well, we call them kongais, right? It means potluck. And growing up, like that was
Is kongai kind of like what it kind of sounds like in Tongan, like konga, like everybody brings a piece, like
Mm,
a part
mm,
of something? Is that kind of like the
mm.
same idea in Samoan?
Yeah, kung nga, you know how they say, sometimes they say ay daw donaki.
Hmm.
It's kind of the same thing.
Same
Donaki, like,
idea.
yes, because what do you think of when somebody says donaki?
Yeah, it's
Tua.
like the weekend. It's like the
Iyo.
food you prepared for the weekend slash Sabbath, right?
It's
That's
the
the
s- it,
work that you're
iyo.
doing ahead of time for the Sabbath.
It's the same thing in Samoan when they say kongai.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is kongai like koingahi, like something that you made? Like what's kind of the no?
it's just kind of like
A
like you say,
term.
it's gonna be a term of gathering of lots of food, different kind of foods and stuff. Kind of like,
Okay.
yeah, it's the same thing. It's like tonai. That's how when they say when they change the T's to the K, they say kongai and the N to the G was tonai. But it's like just like Tongan
So it's kind of
tokonaki.
like tokonaki, but
Oh
shortened
yeah,
and put
yeah.
a K. Okay.
You
I
you know
can
what I
see
mean? But
that.
it has the same. But when they say kongai, because you in Samoan, they like the William Mariner stuff. Over time the T just changed to the K, and then changed the
Mm,
N to the G, and that's why they say ko ngai.
yeah,
But it's
because
the
that
same thing as
sounds like if
Tongan
you change it to a T, it's really close to tokonaki, right?
koya.
It's tokonaki.
Yes.
Okay,
So it's
interesting.
the same. It's the
Interesting.
same term to when we say, "Hey, me go nige tau tonaki he." You know what I mean. So
Okay. Okay.
it's the
All
same.
right. That makes sense. That made total sense when you say, hey, put a T on it. And then you say, it's like, yeah, that sounds just like tokonaki.
Like tonaki.
Okay. All right.
Those were the those are some of my best memories,
Yeah.
and a lot, and that is has to be one of the biggest reasons why me and my wife moved to Utah. When my parents moved out here,
So he lives full time in Utah.
Yes, looks like it, and looks like
Okay.
his whole family is there now. Yeah, including his
Siblings and
parents,
stuff.
siblings. Yeah.
6 years ago, my siblings followed them.
There you go.
And when we lived in San Diego, I looked at my wife and I said, "Listen, I don't want my kids growing up without their grandparents, without their cousins." I had cousins who did that,
Yeah.
and when they would come to Hawaii, we're like, you guys are a little different, like there's something a little different about you, and so I didn't want my
They're looking at the tarot like, what is
yeah,
this?
like there's just certain things, like when certain things, right? So when mom stands up or dad stands up to you, you better beat them to do whatever they're trying to do, like
Yeah.
whether they're trying to take their plates, or you see mom, dad are done with their eating, you get up and you go, "Hey mom,
Yeah.
dad, let me take this," right? So there's certain things that culturally we're raised around.
See, that's what I'm saying. Like he seems to have a very,
Mm,
service minded,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it seems like that's something that was built into their family. I, I I don't think I was quite at that level, but I understand the concept, right? Like it the concept that I would have is not necessarily yeah, when mom and dad are eating, but when you're somewhere and you see work needs to be done, you
Yes.
insert yourself, right?
Yes.
It's the
Well,
same idea. And he's
to,
taking it to the level of, man, even just the little things, we gotta be on top of it, which
yes.
is all like we discussed, like very, very powerful in a familial setting.
Yeah.
But when you kind of extend it beyond, if you don't have the wisdom to
Mm.
monitor how and why to apply it, you can get into the situations that he kind of got himself into. So
No, too. I was just thinking of the only time that I feel like we had to really be on our toes and stuff is probably when Grandpa was still alive. I still have memories of always bringing Grandpa food,
oh yeah,
bring
yeah.
all the time. When he's done, take it back. Then when
Bring
Grandpa
the
had
bowl for
visitors,
him to wash his
to,
hands before and
yes,
after.
right, yes. And then also when Grandpa had visitors, I always remember even without kind of being told and stuff, it was just kind of like a signal. Bring some food for the visitors. They will eat. Bring also kapa, or me'afano and everything for the fun. So it was that's kind of the memory I have when Mentai is explaining of these things. There's certain things that you just do, and it's very when mom and dad they were pretty relaxed and stuff on that. But it was more of like when we had a big I don't know,
Bigger
bola or
group.
something.
Yeah.
Big group. You don't just sit around and just do nothing. There's something that needs to be done. But to me, when it comes to like within family stuff, to always kind of be on your toes and you just do. I I remind I just remember Grandpa Xiaoxi that was the thing to do.
So here's a funny story, Masi. And you know how they would fix the roads in Tonga with the potholes? They would have like
Yeah,
the big truck go over, and then the
yeah,
guys just in the back with the shovel, and they
yeah.
would shovel some of the pavement and put it in the potholes. And I remember I was probably like maybe between 6 and 8 years old, and they were coming in front of the house, right?
Mm,
And Grandma Piwela was like, "Hey, Tua, go and get this like ngahe kotiolo, right? Like a
mm, mm, mm,
teapot, make some drink for them. I mo mapakpaku and stuff."
mm,
And
mm.
I remember I was like, and why in the world are we doing this? But I'm, being obedient because I don't want to get in trouble,
Mm,
make everything. And as me and grandma are, we go give them the drink and we feed them. And on our way back, I remember, dude, me being silly and not thinking ahead. I remember, like, I don't know why I was telling this to Grandma Piuela, but I was like, Piuela, you do know that these guys get paid, right? Like, they're not out there doing this for free. Like, they're out there, they're working, they're getting paid. So why are we going and making drinks for them? And Grandma Piuela goes, Tua, if you keep thinking like that, and she's saying it in Tongan, kapau te ke hoko ho whakakaukau ko ia o mui pehe, ke ofa hataha ia koe. And she's like, man, if you keep thinking like that, dude, no one's ever gonna love you, And she's like scolding me, and then she goes, and then I remember the last part was, if you were out there working, wouldn't you like it if someone came out and gave you a drink and gave you some food and stuff, and just kind of goes along. But as a kid growing up, like, my mind was like, dude, they get paid, they're fine, but grandma, you have to be taught these things. And I think that's what Manti is kind of getting into in this conversation of being within the group, and he wants his kids to learn that. I think that is extremely very valuable as well. But
and
because those are the
it's
things
the
I
move,
learned.
right? It's the move it's what made him move from San Diego to Utah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Obviously I've made a little bit of a different choice. I've kind of been a little bit more isolated. I've tried to, kind of stay involved with the family as much as reasonable. But he's making his choice that was the investment. Hey, good on him. I think it's definitely a good thing. So
yeah, I agree.
That's good.
Around that, when there were family members that weren't raised around it, they just wouldn't get it. And for those of us who know, it's like, bro, like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, so I didn't want that to be the reality for my kids. I know what I know, but it takes a village to raise a child, and I wanted my children to be raised in a certain village, and that village just happened to live here in Utah. So talking about potlucks, talking about just being around family, again, like the Polynesian culture is built around that, right? It's not built around the individual. It's built around what the individual can do for the individual's family. And one of the best ways to do that is around family atmosphere, whether that be in a kava circle, whether that be, barbecuing, whether that be doing chores, whether that be doing public, like some a service project somewhere. Everything is done together. Everything is done in a family unit, and you get to see the strength of being in a unit, and then the strength you now have alone. It's not the same. So I'd rather be with the unit, and so that was something that's so beautiful. And what was so beautiful about your story is, you notice how when you brought your friend, like, it just welcoming.
100%.
That is the culture.
Yeah.
We don't see color.
Yeah.
We see energy. We see vibe. If you vibing, bro, if you're cool, come on. Yeah, you're one of the homies. You're one of the usos. You're one of the tokos. You know what I mean? Like, you're one of the boys. Yeah. Like, you once you come out the car and you're a certain race, we don't be like, oh, bro. You know what I mean? Like, nah. Like, we don't roll that way. It was like, one, you're verified. So that what we stand for, and we know that you wouldn't bring anybody into the circle that didn't stand for the same things.
Well said.
You know what I mean? So that's the culture.
Yeah. I think there's a lot that, all cultures are unique and different and have their beautiful things and their downsides and stuff. Yeah. But I truly think that the Polynesian culture is a culture that a lot of other cultures can learn from. I want to talk a bit about football, and then we'll wrap up with talking about what's next for you. But, I wanted to ask you the question. You dealt with some injuries. Obviously, you talked about the Achilles one, which was really the big one for you, right?
Yeah.
How do you liken injuries in football to setbacks in life?
Injuries and setbacks are similar because it allows you to have a greater sense and a greater understanding of who you are. With every injury that I've had to know my body, know functions of my body, knowing how to get my body back to its peak form and how to do that the fastest way. Now, some of them take some time. So you're going to have some grace there. You're going to have to learn that some things take time. Like things don't heal overnight. The Achilles doesn't heal in 24 hours.
Yeah.
It heals in 12 months. So having that faith of trusting the process, delayed gratification, just answering the bell every single day is the same approach to adversities in life. When adversities hit, sometimes it's not going to get better in 24 hours. Sometimes it's going to take a year. In my case, it took 3 years for me to start feeling myself. It took 10 years for the world to start to see like the truth. So there's a sense of self-awareness that is created with injuries, and there's a level of self-awareness that is created when adversity hits. When adversity hits, you have a choice. You have a choice to either let it consume you and be the victim, or you have the choice to grab it by the horns, control what you can control, and make the best out of that situation. Because you'll start to learn as you have adversities that adversities, and I like to call it adversities, is God's way of adding more weight to the bar.
Mm-hmm.
It's his way of making you stronger.
Mm.
It's his way of saying, okay, listen, you can do that. Now do this. And now, just like as if I were to add more weight to the bar in the gym, I may only be able to lift it once. Maybe I won't even be able to lift it. But God knows and he believes that I'm capable. And he's my spotter. So even if I start to, he'll be there.
Mm-hmm.
It may not feel that way sometimes, but he'll be right there walking with you, right there spotting you. And so that is what I think and I feel and I believe the similarities are between my physical injuries and the adversities that happened in my life. Is just giving me a better awareness of who I am and what I need to do to become the best version of me, whether it be physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, whatever it is.
That's a beautiful analogy.
Any thoughts on that, Mussy?
Nothing too much of what Manti was saying. I agree with everything he said. Nothing too much on that. I was just thinking of what the Palangi guy, the Caucasian guy, was saying on how every culture has their downside and stuff. And I have a question for you too. What is the downside of? I don't want to say there's a. Well, I guess yeah. Maybe we'll just start with that. The Polynesian culture. Is there a downside or no downside? What's your thoughts?
Yes,
I was just
yes,
thinking of that. I was thinking
yeah.
of that. We'll just keep it at Polynesian because, like I said, even within the Polynesia,
There's nuances between. Yeah,
yes, there's just within, but just Polynesian, just generally. What do
yeah.
you think?
The the biggest one that I can think of is in communal living, and in
Mm,
that that type of structure where it's the extended family and the network of people. I see two specific weaknesses that I can just kind of observe from my perspective. Is the first one is it can be very difficult for new ideas to enter. And,
mm,
and I'll give you the example is like, though I agree with Manti in an overall perspective that yes, like he was mentioning, oh, when somebody shows up, like we're just 100% open. True on a superficial level, right?
mm,
As to
mm.
just hanging out and
Yeah.
shooting the breeze and just chit chatting, true, but in a very intimate level, it's actually very difficult to to bring in new ideas, and it's because it is such a close knit um, network of people that the idea is we do it this way because we've always done it this way. That's the
Mm.
strength of the conservative mindset, right? The conservative mindset is we don't change much because why? We this is how we're built. And that's a strength, but it's also the weakness within it is the ability to adapt with
Mm.
new ideas entering it's a lot more difficult, right? And let's just use the hierarchical structure because it is very structured in the
Mm.
Polynesian um, social and familial setting that we designate a lot of decision making to a smaller group of people,
Mm.
right? And there's certain benefits of that, but one of the weaknesses is it's slow to adapt to change,
Mm.
right? And so that to me is one weakness of the Polynesian structure. It's very strong and it holds its shape very well, but it is also very slow to adapt to change. The other one is it's a lot more difficult to build independence, right?
Mm.
Because it is so communal and so forth that it's hard to really distinguish and build yourself up as an individual if you don't. I mean, you can, don't get me wrong, you can, but you have to make a conscious choice to build yourself individually and to develop because why? It's very much a village mentality, a group think, right? It's you don't get outside of the bubble because the bubble is all you know, and so you don't develop as an individual as much because you just fall back on what's comfortable, and that's the social support and what you're familiar with. It's kind of similar to the new ideas don't come very easily, but kind of developing yourself independently can be difficult at sometimes because
Mm.
you're always going to be pulled back into the community, into the extended family structure, and it doesn't always give you the opportunity to develop on an independent level.
Yeah. Yeah. No, good point. Yeah, because that's what I was thinking. Because I what Manta was touching earlier was what he was saying. We kind of touched on it, and I was just when he mentioned with the downside of the culture, and I was just kind of thinking when Manta was answering, he's like, what is the downside of the Polynesian? We're just focused on the Polynesian just as a whole. I think yeah, as a whole, as a Polynesian structure, I think the downside is because, like you said, our family structure is already structured, right? And then if you have something that you want to introduce, like what you said, like a new idea or something different, or even maybe say something that's maybe a new thing to hear about that you can't you can't really you can't really share that because you're not in a certain position. You are
Mhm.
born into a structured position, even within the number of siblings, right? E- the
Yeah.
oldest usually has a certain responsibility that if I'm the youngest one right here, I usually can't go and tell somebody what I really want to feel if it doesn't sometimes go through the older sibling because some people will only listen to the older sibling because he supposedly represents all of us, right? Kind of thing, you know what I mean? To
Yeah.
so I'm just saying that's probably the difficult part and maybe the downside that sometimes it's it depends on where you are born at and the if you have an idea or something that you want to share, you have to just go through that. But sometimes if you're not in a good relationship with your brother or whatever, for some reason, or your older brother doesn't agree with it, you won't get heard to the extended family's perspectives when you do have your meetings or get-togethers and stuff. Just because the extended family won't respect you because, or even care what you think because you're the younger ones.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what I'm just kind of throwing. And I'm just talking about the whole kind of Polynesian kind of structure kind of thing. and it's usually structured that way. And there's a lot of positive in that, but I'm just saying that's probably the downside.
Not 100%. There is no solution. There's only trade-offs.
Yeah.
The one thing that I wanted to respond to kind of Manti's, I understand his overall mindset, but I do think from my personal observation, it is a misconception
Hmm.
within the gospel and members and stuff is, where he was giving the analogy that, God puts on the weight because, and sometimes it's God, sometimes it's other, it's just life. Life just
Yeah.
happens because God knows that you can do it. My experience is that not is always the case.
Hmm.
People always say like, oh, God wouldn't, it wouldn't happen to you unless you could handle it, right? Like meaning anything that happens in your life, you should be able to deal with it. Like you were able, and I am not of that mentality. The only reason why you can deal with it is if you have God on your side, right?
Mm.
And really for me, the reason or one of the main reasons why we have adversity is to drive us back to God, right?
Mm.
Because we quickly realize how unequipped we are to do what needs to be done.
As
And
human beings, yeah.
as human beings. And let's look at, I mean, we've identified this pattern with Manti, right? He even himself says, the path I was going was leading me to not develop who I am as an individual, but to develop me into something that I'm glad that I didn't become. Right. And so for me, what happened to Manti would have destroyed him if he didn't have God on his side. And so really, it should have destroyed Manti, but because he turned to God, he was able to overcome it. And that's why I lean more towards, like he's saying, he was the spotter, right? It's
Mm.
it's it's not that God said, yeah, you can lift that Manti on your own and you can do it. It's like, no, 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 no. You'll get through it because I'm here. And to
Mm.
me, adversity in life and sports, because sports is part of life, it it's to drive us towards God. Because if we never had adversity and we never had challenges, then we would have no need for a God. Because
Yeah.
everything's great. The only time I stop to think about what I'm doing in my life is when something's going wrong. If everything's
Yeah.
going great, I'm just like, oh yeah, this is fantastic. You're right.
Yeah.
But whenever there's a challenge in life, we stop and we say, holy smokes, what's going on? Right?
Mm.
Am I doing what I should be doing? Is there something that I should stop doing? And it to me, challenges in life is to help us turn back to God. And so that the curse becomes a blessing. Because if we don't, the challenge, which is a quote unquote curse, can really destroy you and remain a curse. But if we're able to fall back on God and God gets involved, then the curse becomes a blessing and we are able to become better out of it
Mm.
and develop a relationship with God. But that's kind of like the only thing I wanted
No.
to add to that.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I kind of had that perspective, but I think you kind of put it you as well thought of and explained, because I was, yeah, when you were saying too about challenge. If you take too much, I mean, God wouldn't give you a challenge that you can't handle. But I think it's more of, I think you're absolutely correct that everyone's gonna go through some challenges. People will fail in those challenges is because they didn't probably seek God's help or assistance. And those ones who did probably overcame it and stuff really sought God's help and
Mhm.
try to be inspired of if this is what they should be doing and stuff. So yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
a good point. Good point.
And I will throw out there that when we say you overcame the challenge,
Mm,
we're not necessarily always saying that you come out winning the
yeah.
battle. Like Manti did not come out winning in regards to money and football, but he
Mm,
came out winning as an individual. And that's where we're saying the winning will happen. Because
mm,
sometimes you lose the temporal battle, but the spiritual one you will always win. with God
Mm,
on your side,
mm.
and you will survive. And sometimes winning is not about changing the circumstance. It is surviving or becoming strong enough that really the circumstance hasn't changed. It's just your ability to endure and to handle the circumstance has increased. And so I just
Yeah.
want to throw that nuance is we're not saying that when God comes in, like he fixes everything outside. No,
Hmm.
at a bare minimum, what matters most is that he makes you on a personal level strong
Mm.
enough to overcome even the failure. The failure will remain a failure in the temporal sense, but in the
Yeah.
spiritual sense, you will overcome and
Yes.
become better because of that temporal, that quote unquote temporal
Yes.
failure.
And it's always important to keep that perspective that this is Earth. There's another life after this
Exactly.
time, and that you gotta.
Yeah.
And if you maintain that perspective, that goes a long way in dealing with those challenges. Yeah,
No, I
absolutely.
agree 100%.
I think you should write a poem like Footprints in the Sand, but call it like barbells on the weight bench or something.
Yeah.
I love that. Was there any was there any experience in the NFL walking out onto a field that was as magical or surreal as walking out at Notre Dame? Or was Notre Dame really the peak?
When in football terms, Notre Dame was the peak.
Yeah.
Like there,
The energy, the atmosphere,
yes,
the whole deal.
I didn't attain that level in the NFL. From a football standpoint, from um the from the world's perspective, I didn't.
The all eyes on
The
you.
all
fan.
eyes on you,
Yeah.
the belief,
Yeah.
Manti got this.
Yeah.
Like, don't worry, we have Manti on the team.
And when you walk
He's-
out with the
he's gonna-
flag, it's like,
yeah, he's gonna take that's
yeah.
that was Notre Dame. Notre Dame was everything's okay because 5 is out there.
Wasn't it a big surprise that he went to Notre Dame? If I remember from the Netflix
Yes.
documentary, because his dad was a USC fan or something like
Yeah,
that.
and you were yeah, and I think he personally was like a USC because of Reggie Bush was during that time. He kind of followed, and he was leaning towards USC, and then he kind of explains his story of
Yeah,
saying the prayer.
he said a prayer, but wasn't it like the janitor? Wasn't it he ran into the janitor and the janitor was
Yeah.
like, I because he was telling the janitor he's probably going to go to USC,
Mm,
and the janitor said something like, I always thought you were going to just go and do something special at like Notre Dame or something like that. And it was
yeah.
from that he was like, "Oh, am I just going to USC because everybody thinks I should go to USC?" And then
Mm,
he said the prayer and he made his decision. But
yeah. Yeah. Pretty.
this
Yeah. It
goes,
was.
yeah,
No, I was gonna say that he kind of started a trend too because I've started to notice. I mean, I didn't notice any Polynesians got people playing at Notre Dame, but since Manti, I've noticed a couple Samoans going to go play in Notre Dame. So, it's kind of like starting that kind of
yeah.
trend, just needing somebody to start it. So I thought it was
Well,
interesting.
and this kind of goes back to because he was such a highly recruited, and Notre Dame was
Yeah.
struggling. If I remember
Yeah.
correctly, Notre Dame was struggling at that
Yeah.
time. That
Yep.
really they saw Manti as the first step in the right direction in years, right? And so they had an expectation that, like, dude, with Manti coming,
Mm,
we're gonna turn this thing around. Like
mm,
Manti was the guy that's gonna lead us to the promised land in Notre Dame's point of view.
mm. Yeah.
You had the whole stadium on your back.
Yeah. And a lot of it had to do with me, but a lot of it had to do with my teammates too. And the camaraderie, the unit which we were able to build.
Yeah.
Right. Because let's face it, football's a team, one of the greatest team sports, if not the greatest. There's 11 dudes out there, 11 different alphas. And it takes a special individual or a group of special individuals to take 11 alphas and bring them together.
Yeah.
And I was able to be one of those, not the only, but one of those that was able to connect with each and every one of them in a way that when the leader spoke, they not only listened, but they believed. There's a difference.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's one thing to listen, but there's another thing to believe that whatever I'm saying as a leader is what we're gonna do. And that takes a lot of love, man.
And this comes
Mhm.
back to Masi. They believe him because he believes this false idea that we put in our heads.
Mm.
We're unstoppable. We are the greatest team of all time. When you're like, oh, when you look back at it objectively, we're probably not the greatest. But because you built it in your mind, right? Like
Mm.
that is because you're putting such a high standard and you're committed to it. Because he really believed in it. When he said it to the team feels that Manti really believes in it. And then to top it off, he's performing and showing the results. So we believe even more. So once again, this comes back to kind of what we talked about, this natural,
Another
I
in-
would say the natural man that we have to elevate mentally in order to achieve this type of success when
yeah,
when that's the only route that you can produce at that time.
yeah. No, another thing I was thinking of too. Maybe you can give me your thoughts. I can give you my thoughts. That is football, American football, the greatest team sport because compared to any other team sports. What do you think? Just what's your initial thoughts on that? I'm thinking me personally. I said there is an argument. One, because not only that you have 11 people on the field, because you can say there's 11 people on defense on the same team, 11 people on offense. Then there's 11 people on special teams, right? You can usually they're the same but kind of different with the punt team
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
the kickoff, right? So and then making the field goals, even go for the field goals. So I'm like, dude, to be a leader, and there's only very few. I think of guys like Tom Brady, right? That when he speaks, it goes not only from the offense, it goes to the defense, special teams, right? All the other second level guys, because they all play a role in winning a game. Because a block punt, a kickoff to have a big hit can really change momentum. So I was
Mm-hmm.
like, man, there's an argue. I don't know what I'm just thinking. That's what I'm thinking to that. Is football the greatest team sport because of the different levels and different amount of like there's first strings of defense, offense, special teams. Then yeah, a lot of people play different roles to kind of win you a game, and that's a lot of people that go on the field. I don't know. That's just me.
Yes, I would probably have to say that I would agree
Yeah.
for that reason that you say, and even more than that, because football is just a massive operation. So you
Mm,
have, like you talked about, all the different positions across the board, but look at all the coaching staff that's needed. Look at all the equipment, all the trainers, and everybody to logistically move things and then to feed and take care and train such. It's the scale of football to me that convinces me it's the greatest team sport. And it's not just because the players.
mm,
You have players, but you don't have a good training and medical staff, your players fall apart, right?
mm,
If you have the players, but nobody's taking care of the logistics for, like, 60 guys traveling or 40
mm.
guys traveling. I mean, there's just it's a massive operation. And because I can't think of another sport that operates at the scale of football, that's why I believe it's probably the greatest team sport. But I extend that beyond the players. I extend it to the equipment staff, the the coaching staff. Then a lot of them have like nutritionists, and then just the amount of players that have to be taken care of. And then you go, when I was at BYU, you go, you get off of practice, you
Mm.
put everything, and then you put it in a bag, and then There's people who wash your
Mm.
training clothes every day. So when you show up for the next practice,
So
there's
set up
clean
and clean.
clothes every day. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
just the scale. You're talking about hundreds of people to make a successful football team, right? And that to me is why I would say, okay, just because of the scale alone. I mean, I don't know of any All Blacks. I don't, the All Blacks in rugby, hockey, basketball. None of them have the sheer size of people it needs to
To
have a
make a
team compete,
successful.
to
Yeah.
make a successful team, right? And that to me is why I would say football is probably the greatest team sport, just because of scale, the size.
Okay.
In basketball, you got 5 guys, couple of trainers.
Mm.
You're talking like 20, 30 people. I
Yeah.
mean, in football, that's 20, 30 people, just the players, or maybe even
Yeah.
more,
Yeah.
without the
50.
support
Yeah.
staff.
Yeah. If you got like third and fourth strings, like 50 plus. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's why I would
Okay.
probably agree, Masi.
Yeah. No, that was what I was just thinking when Manti was just saying. He said, "Oh, greatest team sport, maybe the greatest team sport." So I was like, "Dude, is it?" So yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
That's what hit me.
Because
Just
if
want
it
to talk
was
about.
just, because there's 11 guys on the field, and I was like, well,
Yeah.
there's 15 in rugby off of that scale. No, but like you're
Yeah.
saying, there's special teams, there's,
Yeah.
offense, defense.
Yeah.
But
And
I
it
would
took.
extend it beyond that to the people on the sidelines.
Yes. Yeah. No, because I was just thinking, we never, me growing up playing high school football, whoever was the defense guy, we would just listen. If an offense person came and talked to us, we're not going to really listen to whatever. You know what I mean? So
Just
that's
go
what I'm
do your
saying.
own thing.
Yeah, do your own thing. You're doing the whole thing. But then I'm saying, like, when you get like certain special people, and I put Manti Te'o in that thing. If he talks to any first string special teams, offense, I feel like they're already in a position that they will listen to you because just like what you said, you've built, you've kind of have this thing that you are the best players, and whatever you say, people are gonna not just listen, but believe you
Yeah.
and do it. So, and I feel like that takes a lot of work to get not only the guys within the defense, that's 11, but if you want to get 11 on the special teams and then 11 on the offense because of what you do and probably the recognition and like what the status he's in, yeah, they will listen and
Yeah.
believe you. So
And
that's
then
all.
what's crazy? That is such a powerful thing to have, but look at how easy it is to lose.
Mm,
Right?
mm,
Manti went from like the unstoppable leader to now nobody even wanted to even mention his name.
yeah,
That is why you can't put your trust in the arm of flesh right there. This
yeah,
is why you can't rely on
mm,
this natural man kind of ego that you build.
mm,
It can give you tremendous success, but it can also just poof, gone.
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
so powerful yet so fragile at the same time.
yeah. Almost like you were non-existent, you know.
Exactly. So it's crazy.
Mm,
Not only love on my part, but love on their part, and to know each other on the level that, hey, bro, no matter what happens, I'm riding with you. So, I the Notre Dame days, bro, it was something. No,
What does that feel like? I mean, walking out of the tunnel, Notre Dame, maybe the most iconic college football program in history.
Mhm.
Is it possible to describe what that feels like?
When in that movie Gladiator, where Maximus takes his helmet off when the Emperor tells him to take his helmet off, and everybody starts to realize who he is. He doesn't have to say who he is, even though he says, "I'm Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the legions," and but everybody in that Colosseum and the people that he was fighting with, the gladiators that he was fighting with, understood immediately who that man was. And immediately after they understood, what happens after? Everybody starts to make sure that the general is okay. That's what that feels like in that stadium.
So what does that?
Do you see how dangerous it is?
mm, mm,
This is why temporal success will just destroy you if you don't have your spiritual house in order, man. And
Mm,
even when you have your spiritual house in order, it can devastate you if you aren't able to handle it correctly,
mm,
and that's why in many ways what happened to Manti, that quote unquote curse, is turning out to be his greatest blessing.
blessing.
Because look, he still made good money.
Yeah.
He still had some financial success, not at the level that he could have if things were slightly different. But look at what he possibly could have lost if it
Mm,
didn't happen. And that's why we're like, must have been doing something right, Manti, because God was on your side, and you've come out pretty good on the back end of this quote unquote curse.
yeah.
And it seems like you're even on the spiritual side 1,000 times stronger and better than
Mm,
if the other path were to have happened.
yeah. And yeah, like what you said, he's much more well equipped spiritually for the next challenge when it does come
Exactly.
around. So it's
Yeah.
pretty. Yeah, he's done quite well, and God has definitely been by his side. So yeah,
Yeah. And if he goes and makes $1 billion,
yeah,
there's a better chance that $1 billion or unlimited success wouldn't destroy him now.
correct.
Back in college and going to that, oh, sorry, it sounds like it would have destroyed him,
Mm,
But now,
mm,
if he were to go through it now, I think he's much better equipped to
yeah,
navigate that quote unquote blessing so it doesn't become a curse for him.
absolutely.
I feel it's like, oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
it's the most. It is the most alpha, most you you really feel unbeatable.
There we go. See?
Mhm.
There is nothing. There's nothing. The game is over before it even starts.
When they walk out,
They know.
they
When
know
I
where
walk
you're
out,
out. Yeah.
when I walk, it's like I saw this thing with when they said with Ray Lewis, how Ray Lewis used to walk up and down the sidelines before the game,
Mm,
or when he would come out of the tunnel, the other team would watch. That's what that's like. It's like a lion roaming, and all the other animals watch, and they have to, okay, let's let him be, and we'll stay here. Like that's what that feeling feels like the ultimate alpha male.
See?
mm,
It's this, to me, who took this to the highest level than anybody I've ever seen?
who?
Mike Tyson in his prime.
Mm.
When
When he
Mike,
was just obliterating
oh,
everybody that was
yeah,
put in front.
yeah. Like when Mike Tyson came out, like he was a god. You know what I mean? He was
Yeah.
like, everybody was like, dang, like this guy is the, to use Manti's words, the alpha of all alphas. Like you would see guys' faces when Mike Tyson came out. You're like, Sole, just don't even put your hands up. Just lean forward and let him knock you out. Like
Mm,
you trying to resist will only make it worse. Eh?
mm,
Just total. But this is the thing we're talking about. Look at that smoke, because that's all smoke. It's not even real. Now that we're able to listen to Mike Tyson now, how scared he was, but what he had to tell himself. Eh?
mm.
Mike Tyson, he said, oh, he would cry and stuff, but he would have to tell himself, I'm unstoppable. I'm the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm the blah, blah, blah. And that also became his downfall as well, right?
Mm.
Because it's a double-edged sword. But I mean, he's when you watch him, when Manti, this is the thing, man. You can tell he still tastes it.
Mm,
Like I look at him and I'm like, as he's sitting there trying to describe that feeling,
mm,
you can almost taste it. And
mm.
it's just like when you think of it, it's like parts of you want it back so bad, even though you know it's bad for you, but parts of you want it back so bad. And when I see him kind of describing it, I'm like, yeah, I know the
Mm.
feeling, and I can see you. You can almost taste it, can't you, Manti? You know? But yeah,
No, I was just thinking with Mike Tyson, and and Mike Tyson he was boxing for a long time, right? So he didn't recognize when to change, and that's why it was good that Manti caught this earlier,
yep,
at a younger age, right? Because he still has so much life ahead of him. Because I think Mike Tyson even says because of I think a lot of it has to be put on his mentality that he was putting on, that he's still, marijuana is what helps him kind of relax
yeah.
even up to this day. So, that's the
The
negative
side
effect,
effects of that type
side
of,
effect.
yeah.
Yeah. Did it much longer and he kept on going, and yeah, it's a blessing that Manti was able to go through that at an early age and, man, figure it out and come on the good side of it. And he looks so much better and looks like he's much more capable to deal with challenges ahead. So, yeah.
Not 100%.
It's crazy, bro.
See, see, he can
Mm,
taste it,
Well,
man.
when I walked into the
mm.
gym today,
It was kind of like that.
the first person I saw over on the side, I was like, "Who's that gorilla? That silverback over there?"
Yeah,
Mm.
And then I
that's
chest bumped you, and then you knew what was up, right?
Yeah,
You still think about football a lot?
yeah, I do.
You still think you got it?
No, I definitely don't.
Bro, looking at you, I beg to differ. I mean, you're
mentally,
in crazy
yes.
shape.
Mentally, yes. This physical, it's a different type.
Yeah.
Like
You just have your
yeah.
aches and pains.
Yeah. My uncle said it best. I look better than like physically, aesthetically, I look better than I did.
But you don't feel better yet.
But I don't feel better. I'm not able.
Yeah.
Not just because of injuries, but the training that I'm doing. Like I'm not explosive.
Yeah.
I'm not training to be explosive.
Tear a hamstring, you go run a 40 right now.
Bro, I might just pull. I know for sure. If I ran on one kickoff, I'm pulling something.
Yeah.
Like, I know what I'm training for, bro. Is not to play ball.
I love it, man. Well, since I've known you, I've been really impressed with your mindset, and I think the audience today can feel that and hear that. What's next for you? How are you going to parlay this really healthy mindset that you have right now into your next thing?
Yeah. Well, I've talked to you about it. Everything that I am doing and will do is rooted in one belief, and that is I want everything that is great in this world for my kids and for my wife. Everything that is great, but that has to start with me. And when the new year hit, I realized that the shape that I was in wasn't the type of shape that I could honestly sit in front of my kids and say, kids, do stuff that are hard. Kids, overcome this. Kids, finish what you start. Kids, life is going to be hard. You need to be strong. I wanted my kids to see me do what I wanted them to do. I wanted them to do hard stuff. I wanted them to be disciplined. I wanted them to understand that on the other side of discomfort is glory. On the other side of pain is glory. To embrace adversity. I couldn't do that being a slob, being lazy. And so I started to make changes in my life with my health. And then I started to make changes up here. And these are the most important ones. And that's why, I talked to you about my plans for the future, in business and building something that would change the circumstances of the Te'o family for generations, not just me, not just my kids, but my kids' kids, their kids. But changing it not only monetarily, but changing it up here and changing it in here, because I didn't want to be I can't remember who said it, but he said, my my grandfather walked to work. His son drove, let's say, a truck. His son drove a Mercedes. His son will walk again. I didn't want that cycle. I didn't. And what happens is when you start to get to a certain level, you start to enable your kids. I'm not enabling my kids, and I don't want my kids to enable them. I want them to see what it takes to do great things.
Yeah.
I want them to see the accountability. I want them to see the discipline. I want them to see the sacrifice. I want them to see the hard work, and then them take what they see and implement it in their life into whatever their passion is. And as they start to do that, then their kids can see. And we just build this empire that for generations our family will be set. Because I came up from hard times. My father came up from harder times. My grandfather came up. So it's the progression of life. And I want to make sure that the progression of my family goes up. And if there's anybody that has a chance to do it, it's going to be me. And I'm going to take on that. I'm that one that's going to change it. I'm that one that can change that. When that bill was passed around, that same bill that was passed from generation to generation, that on that bill had a price. And if you paid that price, by paying that price, you change the circumstances of your family forever. I'm the one that grabbed that bill and I said, I'm going to pay that thing. And I'm going to continue to pay it. But now I'm going to pay it at a scale that nobody in my family ever thought was attainable, that nobody in my family ever thought was possible. But why not it be me? You know? So that, going to wrap everything up, that is the result of focusing more on the man than the football player. Because that football player wouldn't have this had he not gone through the road that he went through by going through the fall. And it's the man that has been created that's the soul that goes throughout this life. That's the soul that carries on throughout the eternities. And that's forever for me.
Any thoughts on that, Mas?
It's interesting. I'm just thinking with the generations. You know, when you're saying building generation wealth and stuff, and looks like, well, see, to me, it depends with your own family history, right? Um, Knowing our family history, especially from grandpa, and if you want to go back just within our tongue side, and even our mom side on the Caucasian side, you know, we have ancestors who have done great things, you know, and I feel like if to me the money thing can, to a certain extent, I don't think that should be the forefront. Personally, that's just me. To me, it's the accomplishment of what your ancestors have done, especially with um, you know, mom's side, definitely with the Heber C.B. Kimball, the overcoming of persecution and pioneering a new to the west, pretty much all the way from the beginning of the church. That takes a lot of resilience, and that takes a lot of faith. You know, to me, those aspects are much more important to pass
Mm-hmm.
on to the next generation. I think of that, me personally, dad's side, of just because of their history and their responsibility that they have done. Xiaoxi, you know, just knowing just Xiaoxi's history, taking care of Maria's side and even the siblings and family affairs. You know, and Xiaoxi, if Xiaoxi had so much, uh, you know, livestock, especially pigs, he could have been a wealthy man if he just sold them. But he used all those pigs to take care of family obligations regarding Maria Naukiesina's side, and even, you know, from his father's side, Fare. And he was, you know, he was happy. He was happy to do that. Was that money? No, not really. But it was just the hard work and the importance of family. So see, that's the difference I have with Manti Te'o. to me, it's money is not a be all and end all to pass every generation. To me, it's more of, and to me, it has to be different with your family. What's your family history? And it sounds like Manti's family. He's like the first one to kind of really do something, be in a maybe such a national or big level within his own family. I don't know. I just only know very surface. But I'm just thinking of our own family, of what our family have achieved and ancestors, that you try to pick out certain attributes and you want that to be passed on.
Hmm.
Money and stuff can get you so far, and if you want that, to me that's a bit risky. If you always want to get wealth and stuff, because your thing can always change. Life is going so much fast. What are doing right now, things are probably going to change in the next 10 years. But having certain skills and attributes that you can pass on to your kids of what your ancestors done, and this is what doing what's right and doing what's good and doing what's right, just all the positive things. I think that's more important to me to pass on. And yeah, I mean, that's just my thoughts to her. That's just my thoughts. I feel like it's more important.
100%. 100% agree. The challenges that like and that's where I kind of see a little bit of contradiction in what he's saying.
Mm,
I understand where this sentiment that he has, but I think if we step back and if he says what made him the man, and we'll use his terms, the man that he is,
mm,
was the trials and the tribulation, then let the trials, then him taking away trials and tribulations from his children would rob them of
of growth.
becoming
Mm,
who they can become. And so for me, this comes back to our conversation earlier, which is why I agree with what you're saying, Masi, is the focus, in my opinion, is how to make sure God is on your side,
mm,
right? Because when God's on your side, whether we are able, like in his terms, to grab that bill and pay it off, well, just
mm,
because you paid it off doesn't mean it won't become a curse for your children and your children's
mm,
children.
mm,
That's not that's like what you're trying to say is it's not that paying off the bill is bad, is
mm,
just the sequence of it is build the spiritual part first
mm,
so that no matter what happens, whether you pay the bill or not, it doesn't matter. Because why? Just like he was able to have God on his side, it really didn't matter what happened.
mm,
Whether he made $1 million, as long as he had God on his side, for
mm,
whatever reason, God said, "This is the journey I want for Manti," and that's why it happened. And he was able to extract these, experiences that made him him.
mm,
But if for whatever reason God said, "Hey, we're going to let Manti just obtain this unimaginable wealth and experience," if God was on his side and he continued to rely on God, everything would have worked out. And so, to me, I agree with you. I wouldn't worry about what happens temporarily. I would just give like a
mm,
reasonable, hey, I just want to make sure hopefully you guys don't have to be homeless, right? I
mm.
want to I want to give you something reasonable, but at the
Yeah.
same time, if I were to have a choice, it would be get God on your side.
Mm,
Whatever happens will happen, right? There's
yeah.
no way that we love our children more than God loves our children.
Yeah.
So, because of that fact, as long as my children know to rely on God, God will take care of them, whether
Mm,
I'm able to pay that bill or not. I gave them the tool that was most powerful, that was most useful to them, and that is your relationship with your God. And if it be the gospel right now, that would be my perspective.
mm,
Is the gospel? I mean, from my story, from hearing his story, that is really what pulled him through the darkest moments was
mm,
his relationship with God, his understanding with God, even though he wrestled and was upset with God, but he was at least talking with God. And because he was talking with God, God spoke back to him and showed him, hey, don't worry, just be patient, Just do what you know you should be doing. I will take care of the rest. And I that's would be kind of what I would say is
Mm,
there's a little bit of a contradiction to say, you know, the challenges I went through is what made me, but I want to pay the bills so my children don't have challenges. Well, it sounds to me like you're robbing them from the greatest thing that could happen to them,
mm.
even though it looks like you're trying to do a good thing. But, who knows? Maybe that's what
No,
God wants him to do. I don't know.
no, no. You're right. You're right too. I think, and that's probably the issue. Maybe a lot of people are facing. Right? There's been a lot. They're doing well financially, but the spiritual side of just even knowing God is not being passed down. I think that's to me, yeah, you're absolutely right on that. Because in order to manage your wealth, and if you have a lot of wealth, and it goes on to the next generation, it's very you just make it's probably you really have to make sure that their spiritual growth and understanding of God is going to be important to manage that wealth. Because if you make that the forefront and make that the most important thing, they will the temporal side, the wealth side will take care of its own and
Itself.
how it's being managed. Yeah. But yeah, definitely having a God perspective and spiritual well-being on how to go about to life. Like, when you do have challenges, make sure you turn to the scriptures. Saying those scriptures and prayers are probably the two biggest things. If you can pass that on to your next generation on those two things, that goes a long way on itself. But
That's the emergency kit that's needed to survive anything. Eh?
yeah,
No matter
yeah,
what happens, if you can pray, if you can read the scriptures, if you can stay connected through the gospel. And
yeah.
really, when we look at our ancestors, Masi, what we appreciate most is the sacrifices that they made,
Mm,
right? And it's really that's what we appreciate and recognize the most
yes,
is the sacrifices that they made to do something that was beyond financial gain or temporal recognition
yeah,
or worldly ambition. It was always, man, look at what they gave of their life so that our
yes,
family could feel not they're not wealthy, but they were
no,
taken care of to the best of their ability.
yeah,
And maybe that's what Manti is doing. He's just trying to take care of his family to the best of his ability. I don't know,
yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
But pretty much that's the end of it, Masi. There's only like
Awesome.
9, 8 seconds left. I'm
I
just
enjoyed
gonna
the
play.
interview. Enjoyed the
Yeah.
interview. And this
Wasn't
was
this a
my
great one? A great
yeah,
interview.
yeah. And this is my first time kind of hearing this interview and everything. And yeah, man, it's great. Hopefully viewers can take some positive lessons on this. And overall, it is a very good lesson to take upon to improve your life, especially if you're a young person trying to figure out life.
Not
Yeah,
100%. And really, kudos to Manti, man.
yeah.
That was next level
Mm.
character, diligence, and I really do appreciate. I feel his sincerity
Feel the
and really,
spirit too in some of
yes,
the answers he was
yes,
and explanation he was the times when he was going through his challenges. Yeah,
yep, and really, what a legacy he's leaving for his children, and that will be to me the greatest blessing that he can give, and he's already accomplished so much. With that being said, Masi, always a pleasure. We'll probably break this into
two parts.
two parts because it was such a longer. I didn't realize it would go this long, to be honest. But um, always a pleasure. Enjoy a meat pie for me in New
Will
Zealand.
do.
I
Will
think of
do.
it quite a bit.
Enjoy the
And
Texas sunshine.
yes, and with that being said, thank you everybody. Have a great one, and we'll catch you next time.